The term underrated is always a highly debated concept within the NBA community, and in reality, it's extremely subjective. The most often misconception I see is people mixing up underrated with underpaid, allowing a player's contract to hold more weight in determining their value on the court than it should. While salary is a big part of the equation, right now we're tossing that out for the most part. Today, I'm highlighting a group of players who I don't think get enough love or respect compared to their production on the floor. Let's break down the most underrated player on every NBA team in 2023, Eastern Conference edition. Kicking things off with the Boston Celtics, my pick is Derrick White. White certainly garnered more respect from league-wide fans after his tremendous postseason play, including a Game 6 tip-in to save Boston's season in the Eastern Conference Finals.
It's off the smoke for the seventh game.
That said, he's still at a disadvantage of playing on one of the most talented rosters in the league. While he seems to flourish alongside Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown considering his unselfish nature, it results in him flying under the radar most of the time. White meticulously worked on his three-point shooting last offseason, and it paid off as he bumped his percentage from the low 30s to 38.1% in 2022. With Marcus Smart gone, the Celtics will be giving White the keys to the show at point guard, and he should thrive in that expanded role. Philadelphia 76ers, DeAnthony Melton. Melton is about as solid of a rotational guard as you'll find in the NBA. The 25-year-old is a productive offensive player, averaging 10 points per game while shooting just under 40% from 3 last year for the Sixers.
In the pace.
Another one.
Melton for 3. Count it! Timeout Chicago!
However, he makes his name on the defensive end, having averaged around 1.5 steals per game in all 5 seasons of his career. He's also quite durable, suiting up 70-plus games in back-to-back campaigns. Philly has boasted a myriad of high-profile guards on their roster over the years, so it's not shocking that Melton isn't highly touted. That said, he's the type of player every organization would want. New York Knicks, Josh Hart. Hart definitely isn't underrated among Knicks fans, I can tell you that.
30 apiece. Hart, number 3, knocks down a 3.
Hart's production doesn't tell the full tale of his effectiveness on the court, although it's a start. The Villanova product plays a similar style as most of his fellow Wildcats who have made it to the NBA, which is grinded out, smart basketball. After landing in New York at the trade deadline last year, Hart quickly became a favorite of Tom Thibodeau's, averaging 10 points, 7 rebounds, and 3.5 assists per game while shooting over 50% from behind the arc. The Knicks have quietly built a pretty talented roster, so we're unlikely to see Hart go crazy from a stat sheet perspective this year, but he does the vital little things that contribute to team success. Brooklyn Nets, Cam Johnson. This is the first example of a time when underrated may be mixed up with underpaid. After landing a 4-year, $108 million deal with the Nets this offseason, Cam Johnson definitely isn't underpaid. However, his production is still widely slept on around the league.
Sixers are out of fouls. Johnson teeing off, puts it down. That was vicious.
Johnson is coming off the best season of his career, especially after he landed in Brooklyn as part of the Kevin Durant trade. In 25 games with the Nets, the score-first wing did exactly that, averaging 16.6 points per game while grabbing almost 5 rebounds on a nightly basis. He also stepped up as a defender, grabbing 1.4 steals per game during that period. Johnson was rewarded handsomely for those efforts, and something tells me he'll become a bigger household name this season in Brooklyn. Toronto Raptors, Jakob Poeltl. Another player who was moved at the deadline and proceeded to re-sign with his new team on a larger deal. Nothing about Poeltl's game is flashy, but there's something to be said about a dependable big man who can serve as a walking double-double. The 7-footer's game is quite limited to within the paint, but he is an extremely efficient player, shooting 62% from the field over the course of his career.
Is a hurried pace. The no-look. Oh! Right down Bay Street.
Toronto's roster is a work in progress, so casual NBA viewers won't be seeing a ton of Poeltl this season, but when they do, his talent will surprise them. Milwaukee Bucks, Jrue Holiday. While it's pretty rare, there are instances where star players can be underrated, and Jrue Holiday is the perfect example of just that. Despite outproducing Chris Middleton in each of the last 2 seasons, there seems to be this widely perceived notion that Holiday plays third fiddle behind him and Giannis. In reality, he's a crucial member of this squad. Giannis is obviously one of the best players on the planet, but Holiday is the guy who steadies the ship and does the little things that have led to Milwaukee's success over the years.
Brings it up, final few seconds, 4 to play. Jrue leaning in, high, Bucks take the lead.
Jrue is an extremely capable, efficient offensive player, but he's also one of the best defenders in the league. You'd be hard-pressed to find someone who can match his abilities on both sides of the ball. Cleveland Cavaliers, Jarrett Allen. Speaking of stars who don't get enough love, here's another example. Allen obviously isn't on the same level as Holiday, but this guy has still been an all-star recently and just doesn't get treated like it. A large part of that can likely be chalked up to the immense talent surrounding him on Cleveland's roster. Between Donovan Mitchell, Darius Garland, and Evan Mobley, there are other players who will grab the spotlight ahead of Allen. That said, at only 25 years old, he has been one of the best rim protectors in the league for quite some time now. Allen's a walking double-double who has averaged over a block per game in every season of his NBA career, also boasting incredible offensive efficiency around the basket.
It is quick hitting.
Rubio. Whoa! Jarrett Allen. Oh, mercy!
While you may not think about it a lot, every time your favorite team plays the Cavs, Jarrett Allen will remind you of his dominance. Chicago Bulls, Patrick Williams. Williams entered the league drawing comparisons to Kawhi Leonard for his elite defensive capabilities, even getting the nickname The Paw to match The Claw. 3 years into his NBA career, it's clear Williams won't be living up to that nickname. However, that doesn't mean he's a bad player. In fact, he plays his role quite well alongside the stars on Chicago's squad.
Double. So Williams drives. Oh! Hartenstein! What are you doing?
Williams is coming off a career-best season in which he averaged 10.2 points per game and shot 41.5% from 3 on 3.5 long-range attempts per game. That type of efficiency is exactly what you're looking for from a 3-and-D player. It's also worth mentioning that Williams played in all 82 games for the Bulls last season. In the load management era, that type of dependability cannot be appreciated enough. Indiana Pacers, Obi Toppin. Toppin was traded to the Pacers for 2 second-round picks this offseason, which tells you exactly how he's viewed across the league. In my mind, there's some serious untapped potential here. Toppin's inconsistent play, combined with the notorious impatience of his head coach in New York, resulted in him averaging just 15.7 minutes per game last year. However, he was still solid in that limited role, improving his three-point percentage and averaging 7.4 points per game.
RJ Barrett ahead. Here's Obi Toppin. Look out! Oh! A Christmas Day gift Merry for the legs!
Playing with one of the best passers in the league in Tyrese Halliburton will do wonders for Toppin, who is one of the best lob catchers out there. He should see an expanded opportunity with the Pacers, which will hopefully allow him to round out the rest of his game. Detroit Pistons, Bojan Bogdanovic. Not a lot of people watched the Pistons play last year, which is understandable. They're awful. However, while the team's success hasn't been there, there's plenty of talent on the roster, and Bogdanovic is a prime example of that. Simply put, the guy can flat out score. At 34 years old, Bogdanovic averaged a career-high 21.6 points per game last season, while also shooting 41% from behind the arc.
Murray with 2. From behind the long line.
There's a decent chance he'll be moved to a contender at the deadline this season due to his off-ball scoring ability and relative efficiency. But for now, he's the most underappreciated guy on this Pistons roster by far. Atlanta Hawks, Onyeka Okongwu. Despite only being in the league 3 years, it feels like we've been waiting for the Hawks to move Clint Capella and hand the starting center keys to Okongwu forever.
Nets are 6 of 10 from long range. Lob, big slam.
As a result, Capella may have actually become underrated himself at this point, but we're not talking about him. Onyeka was fantastic in limited minutes for Atlanta last year, averaging 9.9 points, 7.2 rebounds, and 1.3 blocks per game. We even started to see the jumper develop a little bit. I get prime Al Horford vibes from Okongwu, and as most Hawks fans know, that's a good thing. Miami Heat, Josh Richardson. Quick shout out to Caleb Martin, who would be the pick here if he didn't play so well in the postseason last year to the point where every NBA fan knows what he's capable of. Instead, I'll pivot to a guy who is an example of a case where underpaid does actually correlate to underrated.
Siakam finds Achua underneath, rejected to the rim by Josh Richardson.
Josh Richardson signed a vet minimum with Miami this offseason, but he is a way better player than that contract indicates. At just 29 years old, Richardson is a capable ball handler with a deadly mid-range game. Defensively, he can guard 1 through 3 effectively, and even some smaller 4s. On a Heat roster that is lacking some depth, he's going to show out and make some money for himself next offseason. Washington Wizards, Tyus Jones. It doesn't matter that Jones hasn't played a single second for the Wizards yet. He's still absolutely their most underrated player, and that's because he's arguably the most underrated player in the entire league.
Back out Jones, Tyus Jones, three-pointer, puts it in!
Jones has led the NBA in assist-to-turnover ratio for 5 straight years. His ability to take care of the ball is historically great, and he's also incredibly durable, having played 70+ games in 3 straight seasons. Jones should get the opportunity to start in Washington this year, and if that's the case, it will likely be his best season yet. Orlando Magic, Markelle Fultz. For those who know me, you know that Markelle Fultz is my guy. I went as far as putting together an entire Twitter thread on his game last year, just to showcase how talented he is.
Fultz, nice spin to the baseline, shoots over Beasley.
Obviously, Fultz dealt with a variety of physical and mental issues during his time in Philly, but he has completely overcome those obstacles since landing in Orlando. The versatile guard averaged a career-best 14 points, 5.7 assists, 3.9 rebounds, and 1.4 steals per game last year. The 3 is still a work in progress, but his midi has returned to Washington form, and the combination of his athleticism and touch around the rim is deadly. At 25 years old, Fultz is just getting started. Charlotte Hornets, Mark Williams. Williams is really only underrated because he was a rookie last season, and he plays for arguably the most unwatchable team in the league. Speaking from experience, tuning into Hornets games was painful more often than not last year. That said, after struggling to find his footing in the first half of the season, Williams turned a corner later on, averaging 9 points and 7.1 rebounds per game.
Hurt his knee.
I've long said he has potential to be a similar impact player to Robert Williams, and that very much looks to be the case at the moment. Those are the most underrated NBA players on each team in the Eastern Conference. Stay tuned for my Western Conference edition, which will come out next week.